Christian in my heart, oh Lord. Through the cleansing flood I'll go, yeah. Walking with Jesus from day to day, trusting His promise to help us along the way. Trials will come, but He'll carry us through. There's nothing my Jesus, the Son of God, can do. With Jesus building bridges to life, yeah. Where we're breaking down the barriers. We'll do it with our Savior in mind, becoming believers in Christ, yeah. At Arlington Road, we're picking up the pieces, oh yeah.
Okay, welcome everybody. We finally got this. We're on. Okay. We're in Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5. Let's see if we can finish up Mark chapter 5 on today. This is one of Mark's sandwich miracles. And what we mean by sandwich miracle is when there's a miracle side by side. It's a side by side miracle. And last week we talked more about the woman with the issue of blood. Both of these miracles demonstrate the faith of the individual upon whom the miracle was performed on. We spent several months talking about faith from Hebrews chapter 11. And the biblical definition of faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is what the Christian stands on. Faith undergirds us. We don't see it, but we believe it. We can't explain it, but we believe it. It hasn't happened yet, but our trust and our faith kicks in. We utilize faith probably every day. And the faith that we put into action has nothing to do with God. Well, it does have something to do with God, but it's not God directed. I was thinking when you travel over a bridge like the Benjamin Harrison Bridge, we have faith that the bridge is going to hold up. We have faith that the men who put that bridge together knew what they were doing, did it right. And then even over a period of time, we're trusting and we're hoping that the bridge is going to be sustainable. It's going to be sustainable. And that really has nothing to do with God, because it doesn't have anything to do with our salvation. That's what I mean by with God. But faith is trusting and believing, and then acting on that trust and that belief. And faith has a little bit to do with patience, because you have to wait on things to work out. Now, with this woman who had the issue of blood, we know that her faith was demonstrated by pressing through the crowd and touching the borders of the garment of Jesus. And we talked about her blood condition, and according to the law, she was supposed to be isolated, and everything that she touched became unclean. But her faith is moving. Her faith is moving. And then when she touched Jesus, the garment of Jesus, he realized that virtue had left him, or power had left him. And he asked the question, who touched me? And one of the disciples, perhaps it was Peter. Peter gets a bad rap sometimes. Peter gets a lot of attention. Made the statement that, Lord, it's a crowd of people. Now, I was doing some reading, and somebody said that this may not have been the first time that someone touched Jesus to receive a healing. One thing that we know is that when she touched him, he realized that someone had touched him for the purpose of receiving a miracle. And she realized it as well. So before we conclude and look at Jairus, look at verse number 27, Mark chapter 5 and verse number 27. When she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind and touched his garment. For she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus immediately, knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press and said, who touched my clothes? So as soon as she touched him, he knew that this just was not a casual touch. He knew that she touched him because she was trying to receive healing. It was something that he immediately knew about. Verse 32, he looked around about to see her that had done this thing, but the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him and told him all the truth. Now, why she was afraid, I don't know. She got her healing. She could have went on about her way. Why she was afraid doesn't really, it's not really explained here, but she told him all the truth. Now, what does it mean that she told him all the truth? Did she tell him all the truth about her condition? Did she tell him all the truth about how she got in that condition? Did she tell him how long she had been in that condition? Or did she just tell him, I'm the one who touched you? It could have been a number of things. It could have been all of that. It could have been half of that. But whatever, she is being transparent. I hear that term being thrown out a lot. I'm just being transparent. And, that's a buzzword. That's a trendy word about that's used today. But she told him all the truth. Then he said to her, daughter, thy faith has made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of thy plague. And I'm reading out of the King James. I meant to use the New King James, but this is the old King James version. It's called the plague here. And you see how comforting he is to her? He gives a word of comfort to her. And we have to be comforting as well. We really have to show comfort to individuals who have faith and trying to seek Jesus. And I don't know if that's an art. I don't know if that's something people are born with or something that you have to acquire, but we have to show some comfort. I was thinking, I mentioned to the brothers Sunday that we've got like 45 people on our dial out call list. We've got 45 people, and they've gotten several calls. And last week, I put a feature on there that allows them to indicate if they do not want to be disturbed. So they're getting these automated calls. And the automated call on the front end now says, if you no longer wish to receive these calls, then press button number 7. Now, I did that because I just think it's fair. If they don't want to hear from the church, just let us know. But then I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, do they realize what they're saying? If you hit button number 7 that says do not disturb, you're really saying you don't want to hear from your church family. Don't call me. Don't call my house. And I was there's 45, and right now 3 out of 45 press the button do not disturb. And I shared this with somebody, and they said, well, maybe they just don't like getting phone calls. I said, yeah, I understand people not wanting to get phone calls, but it's who you're getting the phone call from. You're getting a phone call from your church. And you're really saying to your church, don't disturb me. Are y'all hearing me? That's pretty deep now. It's not the church saying to you, don't disturb us. You're saying to your church, do not disturb me. Well, you still have to show compassion. You have to be compassionate and comforted like Jesus. And what I'm saying to the members, I'm not saying to those who press button number 7, but what I'm saying is the church is a spiritual hospital, but you can't make folk come to get well. It's like we got urgent care and we've got emergency rooms, and the hospital and the emergency care are there, but in order for people to get better, they have to go. So we're here. We're going to be here, and we are making ourselves available to anyone who wants spiritual care. But I think that in the back of people's minds, wherever they are, and for whatever reason, where they are in their spiritual journey, they really don't realize when you say to your church family, do not disturb, the spiritual impact that that's going to have on their lives. Because this is not like the Kiwanis or the Moose Lodge or the police or fire department calling and asking for a donation. This is your spiritual family. And I don't think our faith is where it needs to be to realize that God may be sending a message through that phone call to bring you back. Now, why did I say that? How did I get on that? What point was I making to say that? Pardon?
I guess him on his garment, but I was gonna say we're not bill collectors either. When you get a phone call, you swipe left or whatever to cut them off.
Yeah.
Well, you might be cutting off a blessing when you do that, because we had prayer service. So you cut off a prayer. You said, well, I don't need your prayer.
Yeah. They are really blocking a blessing. They're really cutting off a blessing. Not that, and when the call comes in, it's a call ID and it comes up Arlington Road Church of Christ. So it's not like what they call it, that number when people call in and you don't know who it is. Spam. It's not a spam call. It's not a spam call. It comes up look, we ain't had nothing. We love you and we miss you and we're concerned and we want you to know it. So it's coming up. And then I'm thinking, I'm gonna get to my text, but I'm thinking there was a time when churches withdrew fellowship because members were delinquent in their attendance or living a life that brought shame to the church. But now you have members who have withdrawn their fellowship from the church. What they're really saying is, we don't value the fellowship of the church. We don't think we need fellowship with the church. And I have compassion because they're really blocking a blessing. There's a story, a joke, and I don't, about a man that's about to fall over a cliff, and God sent him 3 messages, and he didn't get the message, and it's like a helicopter came, and the man was looking for his rescue a different kind of way, and eventually he fell over, and then the story, the way that the story goes is, well, didn't you hear me when I sent the helicopter? Didn't you hear me when I sent the boat? Didn't you hear me when I sent, and the guy wanted his rescue to be a certain kind of way. So faith is important, and the faith that we have sometimes comes in an extraordinary way. Well, this woman, faith is put to the test where she pressed through the crowd, and she touched the hem of his garment, and immediately her blood issue was resolved. We don't hear anything else about her. Now, keep in mind that before she received her miracle, there was a ruler of the synagogue by the name of Jairus. Anybody remember what his situation is? Why did he come to Jesus? His daughter. What about his daughter? She was laying at the point of death, and the similarity between Jairus' daughter and the one with the issue of blood is 12, the number 12. His daughter is 12 years old. The woman had the issue of blood for 12 years. They're both females. So Jesus is on his way to his house, Jairus' house. He's interrupted by the woman with the issue of blood. Now, I was trying to think what illustration am I going to use about this. So here's my transparency. I remember when Brittany got sick, she was having a seizure. And that was the first time that we had recognized her having one. And I was up in a room when she had it. And it was like, for me, time stood still, because this is my first time witnessing my child having this kind of episode. And so we called 911 for the emergency crew to come. And when you're going through an episode like that, time seems like it stands still. Now, they got there in a matter of minutes. They got their own time. But for me, it seemed like it took forever. Now, I'm just This is just me because I'm going through this, and this is my child. So it seems like, and in that moment, I'm calling on the Lord. I'm praying because I don't know what's wrong with this child. I've never seen anything. I don't think I panicked, but I think that for me, time stood still, and it seemed like it took them forever to get there. So I can imagine how Jairus might have felt. I'm not saying he did. I'm just trying to help us see the text. I go to Jesus because my daughter is at the point of death. She lay dying. Jesus agrees to come to my house. We're on our way there. We're heading there. Jesus didn't interview me. He didn't ask for my credentials. I ain't got to give him a checklist. He simply agrees to go. And on my way there, here's this woman with her problem, touches his garment, causes Jesus to stand still, investigate. Now watch this. Jesus did not ask Jairus any questions, but he does ask the woman. He didn't ask Jairus how long she been sick, what kind of sickness does she have, what did you do? He didn't ask any question. He just simply agrees to go. But when the woman touches his hem and he realizes virtue or power has left his body, he wants to know who touched me. Well, Jairus could have had the attitude, hold up, Jesus, we ain't got time to talk to her. You agreed to come to my house because my 12-year-old daughter is at the point of death. But one of the points that we made last week is that Jesus can multitask. Y'all remember that? He can take care of everybody's problem at the same time. Now he delays his journey to the house of Jairus, but that does not mean he wasn't working on it. All right. It doesn't mean that he forgot about it. Now, that helps me because I'm looking for a miracle. I need a miracle, but miracles do not happen immediately like they did in Bible times. All right. Your sick daughter, your sick son, your finances does not change overnight. If you got a financial problem, it took you may have gotten in that financial problem real quickly, but it may take you a while to get out of it. You're trying to raise your credit score, and it seemed like it take forever for that score to get up. Didn't take long for it to dip, but it's taken a while for it to go up. You got to get those issues off your credit report. So, but our faith has to kick in where we continue to trust, even when the blessing seems delayed. Okay? All right, yes.
And our blessing doesn't have anything else to do with somebody else's blessing. He didn't get mad because Jesus was blessing somebody else. And that's a good example to us. Somebody else's blessing has nothing to do with what God wants you to do. Mm-hmm. So there's no need to be disturbed because you see God blessing somebody else. And he wasn't disturbed because God was blessing this woman. Mm-hmm. He just waited on his blessing. And that's how we have a lot of times we're looking at what God doing for somebody. Don't worry about that because that has nothing to do with what God is going to do for you.
Well, teach my class, sister. Come on. Come on.
Don't worry about that. So that has nothing to do with you. There's no need to be jealous of what God is doing for somebody else because God can still and will do for you.
Yeah.
You might hurt it by becoming jealous and angry of what God has done for somebody else.
Might hinder your blessing. Might hinder your own blessing. All right. And if we keep the big picture in mind, if we keep the big picture in mind, if we keep the big picture is that God has blessings for everybody. He's got enough blessings for you and he's got enough blessings for me. He's got blessings for everybody. All right, everybody. Okay, all right. Anybody else? Good point. Good point. All right. Now let's look at Jairus. Verse 35. Verse 35. All right. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, thy daughter is dead. Why troubles the master any further? Now, I need to say a little bit about this. Now, Sister Crusoe's point is well taken. There will always be doubters. Jairus is not doubting, but there are those in his circle who may have doubt. And their doubts could cause distraction. Now, and I want to show you how Jesus handles the distraction that these doubters came. Jairus' faith remained constant. But then there are those who were at the house, and really what they're saying is, y'all came too late. She's dead. ain't no need of y'all staying on this journey. But watch the response of Jesus. As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, be not afraid, only believe. Some have said that Jesus ignored what the people from the house said. Now, he heard it, but he ignored it. Now, you and I have to get to the point where we can ignore distractions. You can ignore. You got to be so focused on what the word teaches. Your trust has to be so deep, regardless of the namesayers or the people who are talking negative. Your faith is in Jesus. Well, Jesus ignored. There's a lot of evidence that verse 36 is, he heard the word that was spoken, but he ignored it. He ignored it. And in the time that we're living in, we really got to get to a point where we ignore things. I mean, the culture and the age that we're living in, you gotta block it out. You got to block it out. You got to just remove it and keep your faith and trust in Jesus. And he told Jairus, what he really said is, don't listen to them, just believe. Now, I want to pause. I want to take a little different direction, because I want to remind our church that we're living in an age where our faith in doctrine has been challenged and is changing in some circles. And what I want to say is, you're going to hear me say over and over again that we are a New Testament church. The Church of Christ is a New Testament church. We believe in the apostles' doctrine. And another word for doctrine is tradition. I'm hearing the word tradition used by some differently than the way it's used in Scripture. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 11, 1 Corinthians 4:17, 2 Thessalonians 3, he used the word traditions, and he used the word tradition to mean principles, precepts that he taught. And those principles and precepts that he taught was delivered to him, especially 1 Corinthians 11, but Myrick does the table a lot. And when we get to verse 23, this was delivered to him from the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed. Where did Paul get this from? He got it from Jesus. He didn't make it up. Well, there are some doubters and distractions today that's causing us to get away from biblical traditions, biblical teachings. You got to believe what you were taught. You got to hold on to what you were taught. And you have to get to a point where you stay focused on what you were taught and you don't get caught up in the tradition or the trends. I call them trends. I don't even call them traditional men. I call them the trends of people today and the contrary winds of change. So just like Jesus told Jairus, be not afraid, only believe, I'm sharing with us, believe in the apostolic traditions. Believe in the fundamental facts and of faith principle that we teach. We don't use instruments of music in our worship because we don't find it in the New Testament. We don't do that. We just don't do it. We're not angry with folk. We're not trying to condemn as much as we're trying to teach. If there was New Testament support of it, then we would use it. This is off of the miracle, but it has to do with the concept of believing. All of you were taught when you came into the Church of Christ, you were taught that instrumental music was not used in the New Testament church. And it was proven by scripture. And you could say silence of the scripture because it's not commanded. And then because it's not commanded, we don't use it. Now, that's where we land. That's where we land. Denominations will say David used music, Miriam used music, and they'll go to the Old Testament. We don't deny what's in the Bible, and that's the point that we ought to make. Is it in the Bible in the New Testament church using instrumental music? Well, people are coming up with all kinds of arguments now, and they're distracting, they're doubters. But we have to put our faith and still trust what we were taught. But I was thinking about something else in the garden. The devil created doubt, and then we started veering. That's why we're in the mess we're in now. Well, Jesus said to Jairus, that's just a doctrinal soapbox that I wanted to share with you. But Jesus is saying, Jairus, if you want your miracle, just believe. If you want your daughter to get well, continue to trust me. Now, the people from your house witnessed her physical death. But what Jesus is getting ready to do is bring her back to life. Oh, yeah, she's dead, but you're talking to the one who can bring life back to a dead person. Now, verse 37, he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Those three individuals got to see things that the other 9 didn't get. I mean, they were like in the inner circle. They saw some things like the Mount of Transfiguration. They were the ones who went to the Garden of Gethsemane. Why, we don't know, but Peter seemed to be the leader of the 12, and he had a closer relationship than others did. So Jesus took those 3 with him, and they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue. And seeing the tumult and them that wept and wailed greatly. Now, in Bible times, the burial of a dead person was quick. Yeah, let me say it like that. It was quick. It was quick. It was quick. And in Bible times, they had what was called professional mourners. There were people that were actually hired to mourn at a funeral. They called it lamenting. I didn't have it, and I apologize. So I'm gonna go by memory. There was some order or organization to the lamenters or the mourners. I mean, they would rent their clothes, but there was a certain kind of way that they had to rent their clothes. It had to be rent from right to left. And the renting or the torn clothes would be over the heart. It would be over the heart of the person. Men and women would rent their clothes. And then, not everybody, but the professional mourners or certain people, then for some, those rent clothes had to be worn for 30 days. Now, and then there were other things that you had to do. I didn't want to bore you, and I didn't get it. I looked at it this morning, and but it was a process. So when Jesus gets to the house, now I don't know how long it took Jairus to go from his house to where Jesus was, Jesus to get back to Jairus' house, be interrupted by the woman. But by the time they got there, the mourners are already there. They didn't have text messages, they didn't have emails, but word got out. And everybody's crying and wailing and making a big fuss. Verse 39, and when he was come in, he said unto them, why make you this ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. Now watch their response. They laughed at him. And not only did they laugh, but they laughed to scorn. All right. People are good at doing that. Now they good at laughing at the things that we think is right and good to do, but they're laughing. They're laughing at him. Jesus put them all out. He taketh the father and the mother of the damsel and them that were with him and entered in where the damsel was lying. Now, she is really dead. She is actually dead. She did die, but the story ain't over with, you know. Now that's the good news. Now she's dead, but what did Jesus say to Jairus? Be not afraid, only what? Believe. All right. Yeah. Physically she's dead, but I'm getting ready to do something. I'm getting ready to do something. And I'm also thinking about other things. I'm hearing people talk about a new thing that the Lord is going to do. Even now, people are talking about the Lord is doing a new thing. Let me help y'all. The Lord has already done the new thing. The new thing that the Bible talks about the Lord doing, it has been done. It was actually done on the day of Pentecost. Folk are using this phrase, the Lord is going to do a new thing, to do things differently that they want to do. No, that ain't the new thing. The new thing is the day of Pentecost, when 12 men were speaking in other languages that nations could understand, and the doors of the church were open. That's the new thing. Now, some of us are new to things, and we think that that's the new thing. You know, if you just start preaching and you only been preaching about 10 years and you start studying some stuff and it's new to you, that don't make it new to God. It's just new to you. I remember when I started going to lectureships, and I was probably here, and I probably had 15 years in or something like that in the ministry. And I remember one preacher, Shelton Gibbs was the preacher, and he was introducing another preacher. And he said, the guy's only been preaching 9 years. No, maybe I hadn't started preaching yet, only 9 years. And the way that he said it, he said, that's not a very long time. And I'm thinking, yeah, it is a long time. But then when you look back on it, no, 9 years is not a long time. And there are some people in ministry, I know this is going to get me in trouble, but there's some people in ministry who haven't been in ministry long, and they start reading and hearing stuff, and they think this is the new thing. They think this is the new thing God is saying. God, this ain't the new thing. Just your discovery is not the new thing. The new thing happened on the day of Pentecost. Yes, ma'am.
I know you mentioned a few minutes ago about the Garden of Eden, and I thought about, well, to add what you're saying, what's not new is not believing absolute truth. Because Adam and Eve had the absolute truth not to eat a certain tree in the garden. They didn't believe it. Noah had absolute truth to build a Noah's ark and the world was going to be destroyed. They didn't believe it. And so what's not new is believing absolute truth.
Yeah.
That's what's not new.
Yeah.
And that's what we continue to do. So it seems is we don't believe simple absolute truth. And how we worship, how we live. God said do this. We don't believe absolute truth.
Well said. And all I can say is what Jesus told Jairus: be not afraid, only believe. Just believe, just believe. All right. Okay, good point. Good point. He's in the house. Everybody else is out the house. Only Peter, James, and John, the father and the mother. And he took the damsel by the hand. And then Mark uses the Aramaic expression, Talitha Kumai, which is being interpreted, damsel, I say unto thee, arise. Now, keep in mind they spoke Greek and Aramaic. Peter probably told Mark this story of what happened in the text. And then what we find here, straightway the damsel arose and walked, for she was at the age of 12, and they were astonished with a great astonishment. Now, we know that there's power, excuse me, that Jesus had. What activated this power was the faith that Jairus had. He had to continue to believe, just believe, even with the reports that the daughter was dead. Jesus said, just believe. He ignored the people who were saying that she was dead, and because he's got something that he's gonna show and gonna do. Okay, now I'm sure all of you can think of at some point in your life where your faith had to kick in. It could have been a desperate moment. It could have been a dire situation. It could have been frustration. Your back is up against the wall. And you could probably look back on it now and see and see how your faith kicked in. Faith is, don't take faith lightly. Don't take believing. Now, the key is you got to believe the right thing. You got to believe in the right person. Don't get caught up in and tossed with every wind of doctrine and cunning craftiness by the sleight of men, who can use a lot of words and just confuse people. Put your faith and trust in Jesus. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus and just to abide by his words. Now, the last verse in this says, and he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and commanded that something should be given her to eat. Over and over in Mark's gospel, you're going to find this thing called the Messianic secret. And the Messianic secret is Jesus saying, don't tell nobody what I did. I did it, but I'm not ready for it to be known. So this is another one of those Messianic secrets in Scripture. All right. Okay. Good points brought out today. Keep in mind, God has enough blessings to go around. Your faith, my faith, has to kick in. Keep in mind that you and I serve a more than able God. One of my favorite passages, and we quote it every Sunday. Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think according to what? The power that works in us. Now, watch this. Two things. God is more than able. Now, he's able, but he's able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we ask or think, according to the power. And I want to suggest that the power is your faith. Your faith, your faith. Put your faith to work. Put it in practice. Activate the faith. Trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way. Just put it in action, and let God do his part. All right. So you can ask God, when you put your faith into work, you can ask God for this, and he'll give you that and some more. Now think about that. I asked God for this, and he gave me that and more. Solomon asked for wisdom, got the wisdom, and got more. And the more was riches. Okay. So when we put our faith to work, God will answer it and give us more. Okay. Any other thoughts? Any other comments, questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Got to hold on. Yeah.